Welcome to the January 2022 Epic Network Call, where we'll be featuring updates from our inaugural group of communities of practice, the rural and the assessment for shorthand. My name is Marshall Curry. I'm the Epic End Program Manager, and we're going to get right underway. Thanks for being here. The first thing I'd like to do is to announce the next community of practice, which will be on the adoption and implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals that we're kind of announcing today for the first time. We have a news story that just went out in our website that highlights it, but we are going to launch on January 20th with a first meeting, and we'll see when meeting times will be after that based on participants. We're really excited about this, as many of you have goals to understand more of the Sustainable Development Goals and adopt them, but I'll turn it over to one of our co-leads who will say something about this group. Pleased to welcome Alana Bowich of the Penn State University Sustainable Communities Collaborative program, which is an Epic model program at Penn State. So Alana, go ahead, take it away.
Yes, hi, Happy New Year, everyone. Off to a running start, it feels like, at least here. Classes start for us on Monday. So anyhow, and this new community of practice for the SDGs, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, is starting on the 20th, as Marshall indicated. I hope that all of you who've gone through the first round of community of practices may want to consider this. There's some flexibility in adjusting the date and time. My co-lead is Dean McLean from the University of Liberia and in Africa. So this is going to be a really international, really diverse approach to this. I find the SDGs provide just an excellent umbrella for initiating, grouping, and talking about our work at the university as well as at the community level. And the bonus is that we talk about sustainability. Some of us call it resilience or other ways of talking about it. And obviously, as the way we talk about it indicates already, there are a lot of potential questions, concerns, and ways to address this as a community of practice and you as practitioners. Issues that you may run into. Your community may not be as sustainability minded as the next one or the big cities and so on. Anyhow, I look forward to your participation. We're going to make it hopefully very interactive. Bring in some other voices as well to educate all of us. I'm by no means the expert on this, and I just look forward to expanding our network. So hope to see you on the 20th, and thereafter, shoot me a line if you have any questions, or obviously Marshall is the head connection maker. So thanks, Marshall. And I'll excuse myself a little bit later during the meeting. I have another appointment to run to, so thanks again.
Thanks for being willing to go first, Alana, and thank you for co-leading. It's really excited about it.
I just have a quick question, Alana. Are the application materials out for participation? I mean, that I assume.
Yeah, I just put the form in the chat for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I totally missed that. I wasn't looking at the chat. Thank you.
No problem. I'm glad we got.
He was being so present with the Zoom call that I wasn't looking at the chat.
Thanks, Gavin. And we will. For those of you who are watching the recording, you can find that link. We'll be emailing it out shortly, but it's also in the Communities of Practice update news post, Communities of Practice in Motion, I think is the title, that Ada Inman, our program support coordinator, wrote up for the Communities of Practice. So thanks, Ada, for getting that going and getting that up. And let's get into the big topic of today, and that is our communities of practice and the inaugural cohort of them and our progress. We're really excited to have the co-leaders present today. Thank you all for being here. And to kind of start things off, I'm going to invite Jane Rogan, the board member of EpicEnd, but also a program runner at Indiana University Bloomington, She's going to share a few words about why we started the communities of practice and kind of the big goal, and then we'll hand it off to the co-leaders of those two communities of practice to share their updates with us. And then we'll have discussion and questions after that. Go ahead, Jane.
Great, thanks so much, Marshall. Hi, everybody, how are you all doing? Thumbs up. All right, good. Some enthusiasm. I hope you all had a wonderful, restful break and got away from what seems like 14 years locked in a dungeon, and got to do some fun things before locking yourself back in the dungeon again. I'm really thrilled that we have two of our communities of practice, our inaugural communities of practice, who are going to give us a little report out today. This was an idea that we had come up with really as a way to try to tap into the expertise of our membership. For many of you who are long-term members of EPIC-N, you know that you're sort of fighting a double-edged battle all the time, a battle on two fronts all the time. And one is that you're wanting to make sure that you have the most successful program that you can run. And the other is trying to figure out how to make your program as successful as possible. And one of the things that we were trying to do with EPIC-N is to call on the collective wisdom of our peers in order to try to make all of our programs be as successful as they can be. And to call on that expertise, and not just to come up with theoretical ideas and best practices that are sort of a little bit beyond everybody's reach, but really implementable ideas that every program manager can really take with them and start working with immediately to really help to enhance their program. And the other part of that is we want to make sure that all of our programs are headed in the same direction, right? We all belong to EPIC-N, we're all member organizations. And so really giving some guidance of what it means to be a member organization and what are the big goals that we hope that all programs are sharing with in this sort of journey to improve our programs and to do that in a consistent way. So I'm really grateful to everybody who participated in our communities of practice, but specifically to our co-leads, because they really took on the mantle of something brand new for this organization with some pretty loosey-goosey outlines and guidelines for them to follow. But I think they've done some amazing work, and I'm really excited to see the SDG community of practice, really coming along. Communities of practice are relatively common particularly in higher education, and they often offer really great avenues for folks with similar interests to engage and really learn from one another, and really also try to carve a path that's somewhat unique and situationally aligned with the organization that they're working with, or with a larger organization, in this case with EPIC-N. I hope that our community of partner co-leads will talk about their experiences in leading these programs, and also in what they got out of the opportunity of leadership, and the kinds of things that they learned. Because really going into this, we wanted to create a collaborative experience that would lead to some implementable outcomes. And hopefully when we hear from them just in a couple of minutes here, that's what we'll get to hear. So my gratitude to everybody who stepped up and helped out, so we could really sort of get this as part of the normal way that we do business in EPIC-N. I hope this will not be something that we let go of, but there's something that we continue, and it continues to build a sense of connectivity amongst our members, and striving for continual improvement of our programs. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Marshall, and I'm sure he has the order of service from here on out. But it's great to see you all in this new year.
Why don't we hand it over to Laura and Mazi of the assessment group to go first?
Well, Happy New Year, and thank you, Jane and Marshall. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mazi Ferguson. I am the manager of the Community Sustainability Partnership Program at the University of South Florida, and I am a board member, and under some of the things that I do with the board have almost everything to do with assessment. That being said, I will honestly tell you all, I'm in the middle of one of the most scrambled days. So if I have some mental lapses of what I really want to say, please bear with me, and Laura and Marshall, please jump in to help. And because I'm literally waiting on one of our attorneys to send me some information on one of our contracts for some projects, and I need him to send it like 3 hours ago. So, so I think I'll start with Jane's request to hear that what the co-leaders may have felt leading the group, leading the communities of practice. And from my standpoint, I really felt supported, for sure, by my co-lead Laura, but also Marshall and Ada. And I can't tell you how valuable I feel like that support has been. And then I feel like we had an enthusiastic group of folks who when they came to the meetings, they as Gavin alluded to a little earlier, they came. They brought their whole selves to the meetings, and I think that was very valuable as well. So it wasn't just Laura and I just talking and throwing things out there. The conversations I felt were that everyone really has some input, and so it brought value to the group, and so for me, I think that was probably the biggest thing, and to have that support and to have input from everyone that attended the meetings, and I thought that was pretty important for it to go well. We started off, I feel, not wanting to prescribe on the group what it was that we felt assessment should be for the programs. And so we really talked about, we introduced kind of where we were as a network. And so I think we really started with the Assessment Institute, which Laura, Marshall, and I presented at the previous month before we started, and which allowed us to really introduce to a very large community of assessment folks who Epic N is and what we do, why we do it, and then for that group and for our communities of practice, what assessment tools we had, why we have them, how well we thought they were working or weren't working, why. And we were really honest with that larger group. And I feel like we would try to do the same with this smaller COP. And one of the things that we really worked on that day was like the first meeting was what they wanted out of it and how the COP was going to work differently than say a workshop, because we didn't want it workshoppy. We wanted to gain information from everyone, and it kind of started where each of the organizations that we were all running, where they were, and what assessments we had, and what we were using, and what was working and what wasn't working. And that really built into our second gathering, and we really worked through that a lot more. And I felt like everyone really came to that session fearful. To be honest, because I think no one really wanted to say that, you know, they weren't doing assessment, you know, on a 10 out of 10 scale. And we all found we were farther away from 10 than we wanted to be. No one was really at 0 or 1, but we all knew we could improve, and we all knew that that left room for tools and resources that we could beg and borrow from other programs. But more importantly, then what resources and tools does Epic N have that the programs could glean from and not have to recreate the wheel completely. And I feel like we went from there to really looking at what was in the resource library, and I think we really dove into Qualtrics in a big way on one of the sessions. And so, and I feel like that was one of the things that a lot of the folks in attendance really learned a lot from, how powerful it was, what actually might be in their Qualtrics license at their what currently might be in their license at their university that they could take advantage of, and what Epic may have in its Qualtrics license that may not be available at your university that could that the programs could use as well. And I think from that, I feel like Marshall was his calendar may have gotten booked a little bit because people realized, wow, we do have that here at Epic, and Marshall is the guy that can help me get this going off the ground for me. And I feel like that was a really good session. And in terms of takeaways for the entire COP, and as Jane has mentioned, a takeaway from of the co-leaders, I feel like there was a portion of that Qualtrics conversation that we actually recorded. I know that there's intent to have that edited in a really as professional way as we possibly can, and then to put that out and make it available to all of the programs. And if we find that we can't do that, then I will make sure that Marshall, Ada, and I can get together and actually record a better session of it. But I think it was actually really, really good. So we may be able to get that edited down. I'm not seeing any heads nodding, so my guess is it hasn't been to this point. But
we'll get it there. We'll get it there.
Great. So, and then the other thing I think was really good, and this kind of came out of the presentation with the Assessment Institute. And again, if for those of you who may not know what I'm speaking of when I say that, I know I've attended for almost 5 years now, and I know Laura has attended as well, and it's the Assessment Institute out of IUPUI. And but I know in our session, we alluded to another session that was happening as a result of one of the EPIC network programs out of Arizona State. And we talked a lot about the project management tool that EPIC has. And so we brought that before the group as well, and talked about that and how that works and how that might be available to them. And so I felt like that went well also. I think Laura might be able to elude a little bit more and also finish up on, if you will, Laura, the other items that we may have talked about in terms of deliverables.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you, Mazi. So good afternoon, everybody. Laura Martin. I work at the McLean Institute for Public Service and Community Engagement at the University of Mississippi. And our EPIC N aligned program is called mPartner. And so, I mean, I would say the experience of being a co-lead on the community of practice, I can definitely echo Mazi's comments that I felt very supported by Mazi, by Marshall, and by Ada. But then also I wanted to acknowledge of the folks on this call today, in no particular order, I'm just going down my screen. I know that Gavin made lots of valuable contributions, as did Stefan and Aaron, both from DSU, and we had other folks join us throughout the calls as well. And I would say, you know, one of the common themes with assessment is that I think it is an ongoing task that we do to kind of be these engines of momentum that drive our programs forward and that ensure that we have high quality partnerships and outcomes. But I know that everyone also said that they struggle simply with the bandwidth to do assessment. And one of the things that I found was that having this recurring meeting on my calendar really helped me to actually prioritize the assessment that I was doing even for my own program. So that was definitely a benefit. Mazi covered a lot of ground, so I will just kind of quickly try to blow through some other things. There is one of our very first meetings, I think we set out this distinction between like, what is the assessment work group that is part of EPIC N, which Mazi and I are also on, versus the purpose of the community of practice. And so just to kind of delineate that, because I know EPIC N does so much, I feel like I'm constantly learning of all the things going on through the network, but whereas the work group is focused on network-wide outcomes and assessment, the purpose of the community of practice was really for us to hone in on how can we better measure, evaluate what our respective programs are doing. And so one of my big takeaways was that whereas Mazi and I have focused a lot of our conversations for the work group, and Gilbert Sayame is also on that committee as well. We've been focusing a lot on research and looking at validated instruments. And one of my biggest takeaways from the community of practice is like, some folks are interested in tracking, and some folks are interested in storytelling, and some folks are interested in program evaluation. And so we actually spent some of our earliest conversations just figuring out like, what are we all doing and what are our objectives around this kind of broad umbrella of assessment. Hold on, I do have a couple notes that I wanted to be sure that I covered. So as Mazi said, you know, we spent some time talking about the challenges that we all encounter in terms of bandwidth. Marshall walked us through Qualtrics. And then we spent some other, so related to the Qualtrics piece, we also talked about the resources that are housed within the EPIC N repository. So there are already surveys that are designed for students, for faculty, and for community partners. And I'll pull up a slide in just a minute that kind of breaks out all of the different things that we are developing and have on offer, mostly again through this great work of Marshall and Ada. I don't want to claim that the community of practice has done that at all. I think it's just been more an exercise in engaging with what is out there. We had some sessions where we talked about response rates and incentives to learn like, what are we doing to encourage responses? Some of the participants actually had just not abandoned surveys, but decided that they would get more bang for their time investment by interviewing participants. We also talked about the timing and the sequencing of when do you do assessment and how do you kind of bake this into your program management. We discussed formal versus informal assessment mechanisms. And then finally, we spent some time working on data visualization. So I'll just quickly share my screen here, I think, to give you guys, oh no, I didn't manage to separate out the slides. That's okay. I have a workaround, hang on. Okay, let me see. So these were some things, and when Mazi is talking about our presentation at IUPUI, these are some things that we shared, mostly again, talking about our work group work. This is EPIC-N creating some tools, right? Like if you are interested in going through institutional review board, there are tools in creation so that you can do that. Some programs may want to do that, others may not. There's a really wonderful tracking spreadsheet that has become like my favorite new thing to work on and look at, that was created for me by EPIC-N. And so there are some logistics that the network is able to facilitate. There are also the resources and development, and Mazi, I think this is what you were alluding to. So just different surveys that are already available for download through Qualtrics, and you can use the EPIC-N license or your own university's license. So everything, like I had mentioned, the community survey, the faculty survey, the student survey, the net promoter score is just on that scale of 1 to 10, kind of quick and dirty satisfaction assessment. And then the ripple effect mapping is a whole nother methodology that we are going to meet with Gavin to learn more about, because that was also something that was presented at the Assessment Institute at IUPUI. And again, this is kind of getting back to what is every project interested in, and do you guys want to do kind of just that quick and dirty net promoter score? Are you looking at semester to semester? Are you looking at year to year? Are you looking at long-term relationship building? And so I think all of this is possible within the model, and just a lot of what we talked about was kind of why and how, and then learning what other folks are doing. And then the processes, I don't think that we talked about process yet. Let me see if there was one more slide that I wanted to share out. Oh, and then this was the visualizations. And of course, this is the Arizona State example where Steve Russell had done some really beautiful work taking the SDGs, which connects to this other community of practice that's launching. And so the tracking database from EPIC-N has several columns where you can align projects with the Sustainable Development Goals, targets, and indicators, and then populate these really beautiful visualizations that you can use when speaking to potential partner communities, administrators, funders, etc. So I will cut it off there, because I think that is sort of the overview of what we've been talking about and the resources that we've got in development to share when we wrap up our work. But I don't know if other folks that were part of the meetings have anything to add, or if there are any questions.
I just want to say that as a result of our work on this, we actually, and I don't know if this is to Marshall's chagrin or not, but we shortened our survey quite a bit more, and we increased our survey responses probably double from last year to this year. We collapsed a lot of the open responses. Anyway, Shelly, our staff member who's really taking the lead on evaluation, came back and we kind of went through with a red pen and we're like, what do we need to ask? I feel like that's one of the biggest things about any assessment, anything that like consultation that I've gotten is like, only ask what you absolutely really need to know and what you will use. So I feel like this group kind of catalyzed us to really, I mean, it was probably a 20 to 30 minute survey. And we really shrunk it down and we increased our response rate tremendously. So thanks to the group for that.
That's awesome, Gavin. You're making me think too about some of the conversations that we had just around the ethics of data collection, right? And how if we are going to respect our partners, all of our collaborators, right, on and off campus, like we should never be asking questions or eliciting data that we don't intend to use. So I think that's a good reminder, and how cool that it increased your response rates. So I love that.
And I think we got better open-ended responses as a result, because like students were like, oh, this was really quick, I'll actually invest the time, instead of 8 different open-ended responses, which we were all interested in, but we just collapsed it into like one, like good, bad, and like tell us the good and the bad. Anyway, it was good. Thank you.
Aaron or Stefan, I think you're the 2 other participants who were in, I think both groups, at least Aaron. So you kind of get the unique opportunity to comment after the co-leaders if you'd like. And then we'll hand it over to the rural group.
Honestly, I think our 2 leaders for assessment did a good job of describing what we did. It was interesting. From my perspective, the very first meeting I had with both communities of practice, it wasn't clear to me that they were going to be valuable to me personally in what I was doing here. I wasn't sure what they were going to be discussing or what they were going to be doing, but by the second meeting in both of them, it was very clear that I was making connections with other people who had been through what we were going through, who had different ideas and different experiences. And I feel like we picked up a lot of really solid advice and examples of things to adopt. And that once or twice, because we're really early in our program, we were even able to contribute some ideas that helped some other groups. So yeah, Stefan is here because I found it so valuable that when my schedule conflicted, I tried to make sure that she could attend so that we wouldn't miss anything.
Thank you, Aaron.
You want to add?
Very valuable. Oh yeah, Stefan, yeah, do you have anything?
Like Aaron said, the meeting that I attended was the first meeting that I have attended of any of these meetings, so it was kind of all new information to me. And again, as Aaron said, we're fairly new to this program. This is a new program at our university, so it was fun for me to kind of go through and be able to just play around and see some of the tools and things that were going on. And hopefully, Aaron and I will be able to partner and be able to figure out kind of some of those things that we want to use and not use for our program. So for anybody else who maybe is just starting out or is newer to the program, it'll be a learning experience, and I'm excited to be part of it.
Thank you to you 2 and to Gavin for your extra comments, and thank you Laura Martin and Mazi Ferguson again for co-leading the first round of the assessment community practice. I know still some work to do, but I really appreciate your efforts to date, and it has not gone unnoticed. I will hand it over directly to Megan Banks of the University of Oregon Sustainable City Year Program and Julie Keniry of the Eastern Oregon University Rev Center.
Hello, everyone. Megan Banks. I direct the Sustainable City Year Program at the University of Oregon. Julie Keniry, and I'll let Julie introduce herself. Well, that'd be better. Jump in, Julie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Keniry, and I am with Eastern Oregon University, which is in the northeast corner of Oregon on the dry side of the state. I run a program called Rural Engagement and Vitality, because our university is all about rural, and our life out here is very rurally based.
Yeah, and ironically, Julie and I are in the same state. However, we represent pretty much the opposite corners. And I think Julie's kind of gloating a little bit that it's the dry side, but she's right. I have to say, though, it is finally not raining today. Oh my gosh, it's been pretty intense recently. But Julie and I will just, with the group's permission, walk through kind of quickly what we talked about with our community of practice. And I see quite a few of our community of practice participants and attendees here today, and thank you. And I think feel free to just kind of catch our attention if you'd like to jump in with any comments, or we'll have an opportunity for you to contribute at the tail end of our presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Julie.
All right. So I do want to echo what Mazi said, just that the support from Marshall and Ada was really helpful for this community of practice. So if any of you end up deciding to lead a community of practice, EPIC did a great job of helping to make those happen and just fill in the little gaps here and there. So I really appreciate that. And I'll just share, on our very first day, we kind of did a little bit of an orientation to rural, just because there are so many different kinds of rural communities. And so we went through a little bit of that. And these are just a few highlights from this. And I'm going to share a link at the end here, put it in the chat, that will give you access to the resources that we collected during this community of practice. And some of these slides are in there as well. Or there's a whole presentation about rural if you're interested in kind of seeing these profiles of 4 different rural places, just looking at how they're similar and different from each other. And then, you know, the fact that there is no common definition for rural, it's more defined by what it isn't, which is not urban. And the reason for the definitions really ends up being about, you know, are you eligible for such and such funding? And then, you know, that there are some common cultural and socioeconomic characteristics, and a lot of rural places are located either in, you know, very vast geographies where there are very few people. Sometimes they're in fairly populated areas, but they still, there's less access to services, and just there's data showing a widening wage gap in rural versus urban areas.
So the following meeting, what we did is we took the comments and observations and really insightful thoughts that our participants had based on the overview of what is rural. And these are kind of a summary of those comments. What I found, you know, when we think about this question of why is it important? Why is rural important? What do we have? What can we contribute? And how can we bring value to those communities? And really the answers we got back were so diverse and insightful. And it made us really kind of, I'm going to move to the next. This could be my biggest challenge today. I'm actually hitting a button on my computer for the PowerPoint. Mostly what we came away with was excitement to be working in rural areas because of the change that's happening. And we get to affect and be a part of that.
So one of the resources that we sent out to our group was a podcast that is an interview by the Collective Impact Forum with a woman named Deb Halliday who lives in Montana. And this podcast is really interesting to listen to if you have 45 minutes for it and are curious about collective impact in rural areas. And there's a link to this in the resource folder. And these are some highlights from that. These are a few of the highlights from that podcast. And you know, just talking about the assets and the challenges of rural areas and of doing collective impact work in rural areas. And relationships shows up on both sides of that list because relationships are just so critical in so many different ways. And really important in rural areas because you can know so many people in a rural community and so many of the different people in different roles. Let's see, I want to go to the next one. And then these are just a couple other kind of take-home messages from that. Really giving value to those relationships and how to build them and how to maintain them and protect them, I guess. And just the value that a facilitative leader, like a collective impact facilitator, can provide, because one of the challenges in rural areas is that there are few people, and so people are kind of wearing a lot of different hats, which is great in the interconnected sense that they are aware of all of the issues, but also a little hard because trying to work in all of those areas as a single person can be challenging. And there's no middle management, in rural communities. There's a lot of entrepreneurs, and they may be the business owner and they're working at the front desk. But there is, in bigger cities, I think sometimes there are people who can be given the function of doing some of this community impact work, and that's not always available in a rural setting. In our third meeting, we had kind of come up with some questions from our group, and these are questions that we did breakout room discussions on. Actually, I don't think we did the third one here, but the number 1, 2, and 4 here on this list are breakout room conversations that we had. And we're going to just go through what came out of those conversations, just a brief summary. And some of the people who are here present today, please feel free to join in and let us know what the take-home message was for you in those conversations. Megan and I were in 2 different rooms, and there's a third room here that we were just using notes that Marshall or Ada had provided. So it'd be great to have whoever was in that room talk about that.
Yeah, so one of the breakout rooms addressed the divide between town and gown. And what we identified through our discussions were collaborating with trusted messengers and community leaders can be a great avenue to reach out to community members. And you've got some of this trust built in. Working with your university's government relations staff is a really nice way to already, again, have access to communities. Sometimes, you may have a little different interest than or kind of intent than the community relations staff. So it's good to kind of clearly convey your interests so that they're aware of it and maybe they can move it forward with you. Really interesting, the importance of being a good listener and maybe taking yourself out of the role, yourself being your university, taking yourself out of the role of the facilitator and bringing in a third party, a neutral party who can then perhaps get to more in-depth responses or, less politically sensitive answers if someone's responding within the community in the context of, knowing that the university, they rely on the university for certain things, they might not want to be as completely honest as they might with a third party. Related to that, another reason to bring in a third party and kind of recognize that perhaps the relationship is already damaged, or let's frame that as a positive. Maybe it's not as ideal as it could be. Then the strong emphasis really needs to be on repairing that relationship. And we, in our group, had the great opportunity, thanks to Erin, to talk real live case study in what she's dealing with in her community with the name change of the university. So we had some vibrant discussion, kind of with Erin weighing in a lot of the challenges that she's going through with that. Community engagement, just a quick note. One of the challenges for the role of the community engagement offices, all of them may be located in different departments, schools, nonprofits. They're not necessarily one size fits all. And this affects how they can work with campus as well as a community. Next thing was kind of illuminating a community engagement understanding by going through the Carnegie classification application process. Let's see, thirdly, kind of something that we touched on as part of our larger group also, that it's not always like, what can the university draw out of the community? It's how can we give back and support our communities, and kind of highlighting that and bringing it forward and making it more aware for the campus. And lastly, the role of our EPIC programs is often as a connector, and often universities as well as communities are operating in silos. So that makes it a little bit more challenging for us. And there's also the aspect of competition, and that could be a number of different things on campus, within your department, et cetera. So being able to recognize these challenges and directly address them.
And then we had a breakout room talking about official and unofficial leaders, and who do you connect with in a rural community? And I think unofficial leaders can be really critical and important because they carry those leadership qualities, just not necessarily with the title or even with any power or authority, but through their personality or experiences. They are really critical to accomplishing things in the community. And just important points that came out of this conversation were the value of building relationships and doing things with people. I guess, go ahead and have the cup of coffee at someone's kitchen table or ride in the pickup truck. I think that kind of thing, is true anytime you are wanting to engage with a different culture. And you could kind of think of the rural community as a different culture in this sense, where you want to just be part of what's happening and just learn about what's important in this community. And you do that through relationships or through trying the things that they do there. And getting to know the, can you go back to that?
No, can't.
And also kind of noticing, like, knowing and being aware of who might shut down your project is another important thing, because people can do that, and you want to sort of head those things off if you're aware of them. And then I would love to have Jiwasmi talk too here, because one of the cool things that she shared about her program is how their work actually helps some of those unofficial leaders, or inspires them maybe to get into official leadership positions in the community.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you, Julie. I'm Jubasni Thapa with Texas Target Communities. I was just sharing with Julie and the group how sometimes from our process engaging unofficial leaders, they have actually been excited and inspired by the process of working for their communities, that they've in the future become official leaders, whether joining city staff positions or even being an elected official and joining the city council. So we have a couple of examples of our unofficial leaders who had helped us with our project later on move on to be official leaders who are implementing the project. Was there anything else, Julie, you'd like me to add to that?
No, unless there's something else you want to say in the conversation.
I want to recognize Juazmi for teaching me the phrase sit a spell.
So, sit a spell, well, you know, how Julie was talking about building a relationship, having a coffee or riding together in pickup truck. So in here in Texas, they talk about sitting a spell, where you're sitting and having a chat and really building a relationship, and how that's key to, you know, building that group of people that you can trust and work on a project together. And especially in a rural setting in small town, those are really key. So thank you so much for letting me be part of this team. It's been really, really nice to learn a lot from each other.
So I'll put the link to the to that resource folder in the chat, and it's really, you know, available for anybody to add to. So if you have resources that you think people would be interested in, please feel free to put them in there. I don't know what the future of the communities of practice is, if we're going to continue these, but I will say I really enjoyed learning from the group too, and it was just so wonderful to focus on rural and have that conversation going, and to hear of all these different experiences that people were having in different types of rural communities. So I valued the experience a lot. And we are planning to have at least one more of these conversations, because we had a couple of canceled meetings in the fall. So we'll be meeting at least one more time. And love to have everybody join us. So I'll get that link into the chat.
And I think what Julie and I observed was the value of sharing. And I think as a community of practice, we were successful in that realm. And we hope that we can, in our final meeting, kind of have people kind of summarize what they, you know, brought to the table, what they learned, and then be able to provide them some takeaways from our community of practice that they can use moving forward. And maybe it changes how they might do something or approach something, and being able to potentially identify what that might be would be extremely, I think, exciting for us to hear. And I concur with Julie. This has been a great, great opportunity to engage with fellow EPIC community members. So thank you for that. And also, we hope that kind of moving forward, we don't see this as kind of a one-off thing, that we continue to have those resources available and build them up. Kind of, I think that listening to how the assessment community of practice was working kind of spurred that thought process for me for our rural community of practice. And I think for me, being able to learn from everyone, all our community of practice members, about the differences in rural and how I conceptualized rural initially is different now than I did then. So I value that. Thank you. And I think that about closes out our presentation.
Thank you so much all for your comments. I'm going to wrap it up here by introducing a topic that we normally do at the beginning of every one of these EPIC network calls. We normally start with introductions of everyone in the room. Because the presentations were heavy today, we skipped that. So I want to give a shout out to those that you're listening in and who might not have had a chance to speak. Matt Griffin, really appreciate you being here. Sam Sumner, Maria Ora Tabata. I know this is your first meeting, so appreciate you being here. And if you have any questions, I'll hang out on the line afterwards to answer any. Laura Block, one of our board members, thank you so much for all your help in supporting the community of practice. You've been a thought partner with Jane and myself and all the co-leaders, so really appreciate you being there. And you've also attended a lot of the meetings too, so I really appreciate, Laura, your contribution. And then George Mershon of the California Office of Emergency Services. We've been meeting more with their team to just kind of figure out if there's a way EPIC-N programs can help with emergency response in California. And great to have you on one of our meetings. Their meetings are run very differently, and so it's just really cool to have you here listening in. So wanted to give a shout out to all of you for joining, and then also wanted to let you all know, normally the next network call will have one topic to focus on, and we'll do group introductions at the beginning, and usually there's a lot more interaction between all the people on the call, but really great presentation from our co-leaders today and from those participants who are on the call who weren't asked ahead of time to present, and you did a great job playing along. So thank you so much. And there's a lot of announcements up on our news page and on our events page. And you heard Alana's announcement about the Sustainable Development Goals announcement. So please take a look at that. As always, we leave the room open. We'll stop the recording if anyone wants to hang out, talk more. It looks like, Julie, you have your hand up, so I'll let you finish with a thought. But for everybody else, it's been great having you here today, and we'll see you next time. Julie,
I just made my comment in the chat, but it would be great to connect these two. As I was listening to the assessment, when I was realizing how much I need that community of practice.
Oh yeah, plans going forward for these community of practice. I should say something on that really quick. In general, you both mentioned that you have some work to do. We know there's a couple meetings left that was planned to have happened that we had to reschedule due to holiday or other things. So we're gonna let those meetings happen, and then we're gonna let the co-leaders take a break. And then we're gonna reevaluate and see what we wanna do with the intention of trying to maintain these groups. As you all have indicated, you're interested. And I know the other participants who are not here today are interested, and these topics are not going away for EPIC-N. So that is my intention. And Jane and Laura, I believe you're of the same accord there, and so we'll keep you updated on that. But we also recognize we should probably give our co-leaders a break in management of this, so they can focus on finishing out the academic year with their programs. But I'll leave it at that.